Hey, hey, hey! Hello, people, hello! Oh, this is a show special podcast if you're listening on a podcast. It's about fibromyalgia. I've met an amazing young lady and a mum in Birmingham called Alex. Oh, and this is... Oh, yeah. Yeah, I plan to do more of these shows again. So, taking it from the point of view from an individual who's suffering from the condition, I knew nothing about it, and her amazing mum. And hats off to her dad for what her dad did for her as you listen through the show. We met at a really nice place in Birmingham, had a great afternoon. It's only an half an hour interview, but I was there for quite some time, people, quite some time. But that's what I like to do, like to understand. A lot of people that I interview, I already know them, so I know a lot about their story. So when I get to meet someone who is different and new to me and my circle, then I like to get to know them. So anyway, without further ado, let's get on with the show. And if anything you need to know about this, please drop us a line and I'll try and hook you up and give you the information. But anyway, sit back, relax, as I say, grab a coffee or a cold one or a glass of wine, white one. And Mum will probably be drinking a nice glass of white. Listen to this. Right, like I said, people, we're out and about today and come to meet an individual and talk about something that's quite close to her heart and something she's really passionate about, and get to know her. And anyway, I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi there, my name's Alex. I am a student at Oxford Brookes University, currently studying politics and communications and media and culture.
Brilliant. So we've obviously met today, and it's great that you've come up. You've obviously come up to see us today, which is brilliant. So can you tell us, for everyone, a bit about the website and why you're doing the things that you're doing? What's the rationale behind it?
Yeah, of course. So I developed fibromyalgia when I was 14. Unfortunately, didn't go diagnosed until I was about 18 years old. And since then, I've had a lot of battles between keeping with my education timetable as it was, getting myself through my education system, through my A-levels, into uni, and through family connections, we felt that it wasn't just us, that we couldn't be the only ones that had this issue. We couldn't be the only people out there that had these roadblocks to education because of illness. So we started the website on the basis of trying to help other people that are potentially in that similar situation where they have nowhere else to go to. They don't have the right channels of support. They're trying to battle an illness that they're still learning about, and this way they can get to grips with, we can point them in the right directions of where to start, which we never had. So hopefully that will help.
The Duggystone Show. So what I'm quite keen, and one reason I wanted to meet you today and talk about this, is because when we discussed this over lunch, I'm on a big mission to change the perception of dyslexia, because it's still not very well known. And you mention to people and they go, oh, it's about reading and writing, it's about spelling, which is not. Anyway, that's not what this show's about. And I'm finding the same as an individual. When you talk about the condition, I've seen it mentioned a lot over the last few months, and I don't understand it. So I know that's what you're campaigning. So I think for the benefit of people, can you just tell us what it actually means, the condition?
Yeah, of course. So fibromyalgia is one of those conditions that is very much a hidden disability. For the majority of sufferers, we don't have walking aids, or we will have a slower walk than normal. But to look at us physically, if you just walk past us in the street, you wouldn't know that there was something wrong with us. You wouldn't know that we're suffering in silence, unless we're having a really bad day. That's when you start to see the walking aids and other equipment needed. So fibromyalgia is essentially, in short, it's a condition that pretty much means you're in pain 24/7. There is no off switch to it. There are numerous different side effects, and every fibromyalgia patient is different. No one person has exactly the same symptoms in exactly the same way. The underlying element of the pain, that is exactly the same. So it's everything from muscles, it's everything to, writing can be difficult if you're having spasms, it can be, difficulties with driving, it can be even carrying things. Everyday objects becomes really difficult. Then there's your energy levels. No day is the same for us. You have to kind of wake up in the morning and plan your day to pace yourself. You couldn't just be the average everyday Joe Blogs that got up in the morning, right, I'm thinking, okay, go to the shops, go to the library, go to do this. You can't do all that. Every day is a mission to literally pace yourself so that you don't wear yourself out. Because if you do, the next day and maybe several more days afterwards, you're going to pay. Meaning you can't lift things properly, you end up maybe having to lie down for several hours to rest, or even in bed for a couple of days. So it is a very debilitating condition at its worst. And it is very difficult to understand because even the medical companies, they're still learning about it now. There's no one size fits all for every fibromyalgia patient. So it can be really difficult to live with. But it's the mental attitude, I think, that goes with it that is going to put people on their path to whatever it is that they want to do.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I've noticed while I've been here that I think you've at the minute you must have a bit of pain in your leg. I can tell, you can see it on your leg, which is, and I thought that's what you were doing, and that is, I mean, having pain, and it's not the same as yourselves, but I do suffer with a back pain, and it'll never cure. If I carry anything quite heavy, I can get to the point where I can hardly walk, and I have to take some quite strong tablets to get rid of it. But that is a physical condition, as in it's my disc in my back. So I can appreciate pain, but I've not got that 24/7 because I know when I had it for quite some time, I had it for about a month non-stop, and just in agony, and the pain that totally drains you as an individual. I don't know how you're doing a university course whilst having chronic pain 24/7. That just shows your dedication, your determination to do whatever you're doing, because most people would probably give up, and I bet a lot of people don't do anything because of the result of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing, and unfortunately the society there are some people within our community that do stigmatise those that don't try to do work or uni or anything alongside it, and I think that's the biggest problem, because every person is different. Every person that has this will cope in their own way. No one person is the same. The same way our symptoms are not exactly the same. And so, I mean, I push myself to work. I've just finished doing 24 hours a week on top of a full-time degree, on top of, household stuff and everything else. And I've literally buggered myself. I am to the point where I'm having to go back to using walking aids because I was trying to do too much. Yeah. And that's now something that I'm having to kind of slow down and relax with. But I would never say to any fibromyalgia patient, that there's something wrong with you because you're not trying to work or you're not trying to do something else, because everyone copes with it a different way. If I didn't have my degree and I didn't have my job, I would struggle to keep going because I need that mental activity, but that's just me personally. And it is something that's really difficult to cope with. And until you get that support, or until you have that mental encouragement or something to kind of really keep you going and keep you focused, it can be so hard. And so I've never had anything against any fibromyalgia sufferer that wants to sit back and try and take it easy and just enjoy the life, because quite frankly, if I could, I would. Yeah,
I get that, and it's the same with dyslexia as well. I'm using that because that's my point, my centre of reference. I know people that are dyslexic who have not got the... I've wanted to interview him for shows, and it's like, no, I can't, I've not got it. I'm like shaking now thinking about it. So even though we're all dyslexic, and that's the confusion as well for every sort of condition, is not the dyslexics aren't the same. Some dyslexics might be get a confidence, or like me, I've gained a confidence for various reasons, and I'm out doing my stuff, where other people don't even want to do anything and struggle to get a job or keep a job down or whatever because of it. So everyone is different. So the question for me then, do they know what, does the medical profession know what's causing it, and is there any treatment to it's a bit like dyslexia. You can't get rid of dyslexia.
No,
You're dyslexic.
exactly.
You're dyslexic. So, because that's another question that people say, well, why can't you take a tablet to make it right?
So there is no cure for fibromyalgia, at least not that the medical community is aware of. And there are many different causes or what they believe to have caused it. For some people, it is physical trauma that causes it. So in my case, it was surgery that I had to have when I was 14. I had to have a cyst removed, and within several weeks of post-operation, I developed this. But it took years for it to be diagnosed in this country because no one believed that someone of my age should have this condition.
Right.
There are medications that help cope with it. There are about 4 that are recognised in the UK for fibromyalgia sufferers. And I used to take one of them. One of them is a tablet called pregabalin. It's best taken in smaller dosages to start off with, and then you build it up. But it's a lot of the medication is all the same. Eventually, over time, it will stop working. It will stop having that same effect. So you have to keep doubling up and increasing the dosage. And for me personally, I didn't want my life like that. I'm not very good with medication. So I've tried to go down the alternative route, which is, kind of holistic therapy. So reflexology is a big help for fibromyalgia patients. So some, they prefer acupuncture. I do not do well with acupuncture. I'm terrified of needles. So the first day, I remember I screamed bloody murder the first day I had it. I was like, I am never doing this again. It was just no. So for me, it didn't work. But for some patients, it does. Sometimes hydrotherapy works great for some people. Sometimes it's yoga. Every fibromyalgia patient will have their own system of what works best for them, whether that's including medication or the non-medicated route. It is up to them. But there is no official cure because, as I said, for some it's caused by physical trauma, like me. For others, there is a theory that it's stress related. So people that have been exposed to high levels of stress from a young age, for some scientists do believe that it's caused by that, and it's a culmination of that stress that's caused it later on in life. And then for others, they believe it's genetic. So there's no one concrete answer to what causes it, which again makes finding solutions very difficult.
Yeah. It's about like everything. If you don't know what's caused something, you're going to struggle to get a cure if you don't know what the cause and effect is. Because if you knew it was, I don't know, it's a bit like getting sunburnt. You know it by going out in the sun, you're going to get a burn. So don't go in the sun, you're not going to get sunburnt. That type of thing,
exactly.
So at least I use a lot of analogies. It's just the way my brain works. So that's quite interesting. And you were saying before that it's very well known in the States, and that's why you believe that I've started to notice it more, because I've seen it on a lot of forums and a lot of Facebook pages I'm on. Does anyone know what to do with fibromyalgia? And I'm like, I felt a bit embarrassed asking not knowing. It's like I'm the only one that doesn't know about it. That's how I felt.
No, not at all. And that's one of the key things is fibromyalgia in the UK has only recently become more recognised, because it wasn't until 2014 that it was recognised as a disability in this country. So the community as a whole would never discourage anyone from asking, because it's only through asking that you find out, how can I help? Is it something I can help with? Or more to the point, do you want help with it? Because not every fibromyalgia patient does want help. Sometimes we just want to kind of be treated as normal and carry on. In the States, it's been far more well known about for much longer. Off the top of my head, I believe it was the early 2000s that it was recognised as a disability there. And a lot of the key research into the fibromyalgia comes from the UK. There's massive trials going on at the moment with investigating the benefits of CBD oil on fibromyalgia patients. Okay. And that potentially is...
That's the cannabis extract.
Exactly.
But not the stuff that gets you high. People get confused about when they talk about cannabis therapy. They're taking the elements of the cannabis that is not the... It's not the... I forgot what it's called.
Yeah, the THP is the psychosomatic element that affects you. So yes, that part is completely withdrawn. So at the moment they're investigating putting it into oils, putting it into lotions that can seep through the skin into the bloodstream, and they're even looking at a pain patch at the moment, which I believe is into its second stage of human trials now, which is really good, because so far I think it's about 90% success rates with fibromyalgia patients. So it has the potential to make a huge difference. Exactly. The only downside for the UK is we have much stricter laws, and of course the laws surrounding any involvement with cannabis in the UK means that we could potentially face a much later exception of it than the US. But there are a few people I know that go frequently to Amsterdam for treatment for the oils. But I actually had my first trial of the CBD oil in a very low percentage that was legally bought, I might add, in the UK just last week. And I must say, it's the foulest thing I have ever tasted. Really? It is disgusting, and I understand thoroughly why they're trying to get people, get the pharmaceutical industry to investigate it, putting it into a lotion or something to go into the skin rather than tasting it. It is not very pleasant. You have to drink probably half a bottle of water straight afterwards. It is, it's disgusting. But it did seem to help. I noticed within a couple of hours that my pain levels, especially in my leg, were greatly improved in what they'd been a couple of hours ago. And I'm still testing it every couple of days to see, I'm trying to log it to see if it is making the benefit or if it's psychological.
I've got it. Yeah, you're right, and I believe that those sort of laws I think the law around, especially if it's for medical use of cannabis and things, I imagine that'll change in the UK as well, as in most other countries around the world have started to relax the laws. But yeah, Amsterdam. I used to live in Holland, so I know Amsterdam quite well. I used to live in Rotterdam, so yeah, that's a place to go if you want that sort of stuff. Not condoning it, people, because it's illegal in the UK, but it's not illegal in Holland. So
no, exactly, and it's one of those things where people do have to become aware in the UK that we're not looking at the psychedelic elements of it or the psychosomatic elements of it. It is the medicinal side of it, and it has the potential to change so many lives. And it's not just from fibromyalgia patients; it's MS patients, lupus. There's all sorts of people that could receive this kind of help. I've
seen some things where there's been people with like Parkinson's and things, or where they've got tremors and things like that, and then they're taking the oils, and then within a short space of time the tremors have gone, and you think this substance could potentially have massive effects for a whole group of individuals.
Exactly, and it is something that potentially will take a while in this country, but for right now, every fibromyalgia patient will do what they need to kind of keep going and get the best out of life that they can. If that becomes a future possibility, then fantastic. It's going to be very few people that would turn that down at the option of having a pain-free life, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And we've not actually spoke about one reason why we're here, because you've got a website that, because your mum's here with us as well. We might even actually have a little chat with her in a minute. We've had a lovely meal here, people. It's beautiful, really nice, I tell you. But because then the flip side of it is, as you said, it normally affects older people, and obviously it's affected you because that sounds a bit like by a trauma. That's the same as dyslexia. People can be dyslexic if you've had head trauma on the left hemisphere, so there's some similarities there. But then you obviously, as a parent, you want the best for the child, so you want to get them educated. And if you're suffering from 14, that's one of the most crucial parts of your educational life. So I'm going to ask your mum this question. How did you go about then finding the right... Because I know I've talked to someone yesterday about dyslexia. They're at a school in Wolverhampton, and they're not recognising that their son is dyslexic and just saying that he's being lazy, etc., the typical stuff. So as a parent, tell us a bit about that. About what you did at 14 to get her educated. How did this all start? What you're doing?
Well, it was rather difficult. Basically, we had to go down the website route, as in do the research that way. We struggled with finding schools that would take her because she was actually too old. We tried an academic school. Yeah. And they said, you're too old. We tried one of the recognised colleges in the city, and she didn't have enough qualifications for that. That was one of the disappointing parts of it. It was just the constant struggle.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. We thought you'd bring you in. I surprised you with that with a little interview. So the education, is education coming to get a grips with it? Because obviously it's quite only relatively new as a condition, as a recognised disability, 2014. So what's your experience of your education that you've done?
I think the schools, in terms of like GCSE to A level range, there's a lot to still do for them, because it's a smaller proportion of fibromyalgia patients that get it under the age of 30. There isn't much there at the moment. When you get to the university level, that's when it all changes. There are numerous universities that are doing a fantastic job of making sure that support line is there. I mean, my university at the moment, they have been fantastic with me. It's deadline month for me, so I'm inundated with coursework, and some of my professors have been utterly amazing, so supportive and so helpful with trying to, give me the best help that they can give me to keep me going and not overwhelm me and affect my health even more than it is. But when I was at school, because there was still very little known about it, my high school, my initial school, they didn't really know what to do. They didn't know how to help me. There was so many days where I couldn't physically get to school. So we then looked at home care options, but that wasn't possible because of the treatment I was still receiving. I wasn't there. I wasn't going to be able to be at home studying all the 5 days a week when I'm still required to go back and forward to hospital 2-3 times a week at this stage. We then, as my mum said, we then ended up going to a college in a wheelchair. My mum used to push me every day up a massive hill to get me to class. And again, my classmates, my teachers, they were wonderful. Unfortunately, they just didn't have the capabilities of supporting me. They didn't know how to support me at the best stage. So it meant that I ended up being at home full time. I think I was pretty much about 17 to 18, I was at home full time at that stage. I ended up having to contact a company privately and do all my GCSEs from home. All my tuition was over the phone or via emails with tutors, and I had to kind of just do enough to get the few GCSEs that I needed to get in order to get my A-levels going, which I did. Managed to do it. I got the required amounts to get back into school to continue my education, and then the A-level question came into play because I was too old to return to mainstream school. Then that brought up a lot of problems. We had an utter nightmare. My mum and I probably spent a good several months researching over 300-400 schools across the UK, from right down on the south coast to right up north in Scotland. We searched everywhere of what school was going to be able to support me but also allow me to return to education. And I ended up at a very lovely tiny private school on the south coast called Buxford. It's an international boarding school, and I must say I was there for 2 years, and it was the best 2 years of my life. They were...
Sorry, Mum.
Yeah, sorry.
That's really good.
It was one of those things where, everyone thinks of boarding school as the first thing they can think of is Harry Potter. And I must admit, I was secretly terrified, being away from home, trying to manage my condition by myself, sharing a room with someone I'd never met before. I was terrified. And so was Mum. Mum's face the day she left me, it was a picture. But I had some fantastic roommates. We had nurses on site who would come and check on me every morning to make sure that I was well enough to go to school. If I was having a bad day where I needed walking aids, or I was even in my wheelchair, they rearranged which classroom we were supposed to be in for our lessons so that my classroom was wheelchair accessible. If I had my walking aids, my classmates, they would not even allow me to pick up my books or my bag. They would carry it all for me. They would walk me to my other classes. And Mum was kept updated ever so often with emails from the school on my progress to make sure that I was doing okay.
Sounds nice. Sounds really good.
It was.
Give that school a shout out.
I will. Absolutely. It's at Buxford International School in Hastings. It's about just over 400 pupils with over, I think, 30 different nationalities. They are utterly incredible at providing support for many different disabilities, and language is no barrier there. That's one of the things. And of course, Mr. Sutton, the headmaster, he is very, very driven, but he knows what to do to get the best out of you. That is very much for sure. And he works me hard my last year. He gave me a lot of challenges, and the school's motto is ad vitam paramus, which is we're preparing for life. And that is definitely true. I've learned so many things about myself and, learned so many important lessons that have absolutely prepared me for the real world when I finished. And that kind of support makes all the world of difference, especially when you're going through your education, because it was through them that I managed to finish my A-levels, to get into university, to continue on this education journey that I've always wanted to do. So they were massively instrumental in keeping me going and getting me there.
Brilliant. That's really good. So as a result of all those challenges, and the school sounds amazing, by the way, it sounds brilliant, and I like that. It sounds like they go above and beyond on your classmates. So because you've had that and the issues that you've had and the frustrations, that's the way you've set up your foundation or your website and whatever you do. So I think we need to talk about that, because that's one of the main reasons to be here, I think. No, it's fine. No, we need to understand what you're going through, why you're going through it, and why it's brought you to the point where you're starting to do what you're doing, because that really intrigues me. The whole thing intrigues me.
I mean, it was one of those things that when I finished, it became a question of, I know I'm not the only person of my age group with this condition in the UK, so surely there are others that have to be in this same boat, and even not just for my condition, for many other ones, because unfortunately our state system, they are under enormous pressure to accommodate every child as best as they can, but funding is a problem, and they are extremely limited to what they can do. And I know my school tried the hardest, but unfortunately I know there are a lot of schools out there that simply do not have those abilities to cater to everyone. So we sat down and we had a think, and it kind of came to us in a brainwave of, we've been through all this. We know the searching. We know how much effort and time has to go into this to find schools, regardless of whether that's GCSEs, A-levels or university. We know how long it takes and how many hours we put into searching all this. And if you're newly diagnosed or you're in a family where there's more than one child, it is difficult for a parent to have to, or to be able to designate that kind of time and still work. So we thought, what, let's see if we can help these other people out there, because there has to be others. It's not just us. So we created a website called Invisible Students, for students that do have invisible disabilities, that as well as physical and visible ones, to offer them that line of support, so that they know that it isn't just the schools or that's it. There are other options available to them where they can go to get the best support, but also what's going to give them the best out of their lives. Because I know there's too many people out there that, because of their disabilities, they'll choose a university because they know that specific university will cater to them, but then they will choose a degree that they have no interest in doing.
Right, okay. Yeah.
They will go down a path that they do not want to go down, just for that safety net. And this is where we come into play, because we're there to give them that line of support to say, no, we know actually this and this university in these locations, they can cater to your needs, and they offer this and this degree, which might be of interest to you. And having someone else to take that time, to take that pressure away from you, makes a world of difference. And like I said, we didn't have that when nearly 10 years ago. We didn't have any of this support. So to be able to kind of give that back to someone else now, hopefully that will make a difference to them.
Yes, that's really good, and you're right. I think with anything really that's going on, and just name something that's like either tragic or affects people, I think one of the biggest issues is everyone thinks they're alone, don't they? Whatever people are going through, any troubles or everything, they always think they're alone and they're on their own. But actually, there's other people the same, and I think it's great that you've set something up where people can come along and have it, and be reassured, and all the time and effort you've put in gives them some answers into some of the solutions. And even finding universities in the school you've mentioned and things, even just that, people might go, well, actually, yeah, I'm going to go and have a look at that school, and it might not fit everybody, it might not fit everybody's circumstances, but at least they've got a place to go to, and I think that's great. So what's the best way to people to find that then? Do they just put in Invisible Students?
Yeah, so you can just Google us, Invisible Students. We are now on the first page of Google, so we're one of the first links that come up. Right. So it's not really hard to find us on that sense. We do also have our website, and our phone number is listed on there. We also have a Facebook page as well. We have a multicoloured logo, so it's relatively easy to spot. It's not a common one, and it is handled by myself and my mother, Alex Senior, and well, predominantly at the moment, Mum does all the handling for me since I'm still at uni. But my mum, obviously being through everything with me, she knows exactly what we've done, what we've been through, and where to start is probably the most important thing. So yeah, I mean, we've got the website. Drop us an email, leave us a voicemail, and
we're looking for videos actually for people that have videos of people that have. We want to know where they're at if they've had an illness. Yeah. So if they've had an illness, what we want to know is what have they aspired to at this moment in time? Where are they now? How was it for them? Could they encourage anybody else and say, look at me, look where I am today. I've had this condition and this is where I am. So we probably want to hear from a lot of young people and their parents. That would be really interesting. We'd like to probably set up a parents forum at some stage, but for now we probably would like to hear from students themselves that have achieved or got to uni and they've managed to achieve the career path they actually wanted. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and that's why I told you before. That's why I do speaking in school with a company called a charity called Employability to say this is me and struggles that I've had, and this is where I've ended up, and this is what I've done, and this is you know what I mean, it's. I think it's great. I'm really inspired by your story and what you've done, because what you've done is what I like about a lot of people that I meet, where they've got something that's would stop normal people, the average person, and actually take that and go, do you know what? No, this isn't going to stop me. This is going to stop me. I'm going to take this and I'm going to adapt and work with it. A bit like you were saying when we was having lunch, that there's sometimes where you're up 24 hours because of the pain's that bad, you can't sleep. So actually, I might as well work on my uni work, and that's a credit, and that's your coping mechanism, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. So when I was at home and the times I wasn't studying, I was very much a little bit of a nerd and just buried myself in books. But that was because that kept my imagination going. It kept me interested in something and kept me focused. With uni being there now, I'm doing a double honours, so I'm never stuck for work. And sleeping it's very minimal. There is no sleep. No, probably not.
Sleeping's for wimps. It's like lunch, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. It's one of those things where you just, you have to try and make the best out of the life that you've been given. And it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. I have days where I want to scream and pull my hair out because I'm so frustrated with the limitations that I have. But I know in the long term what I'm doing and the path that I'm on is going to get me where I want to be. I mean, fortunately for me, one of my best friends is a school teacher, so she knows that the hardship. She's there on the front line of education, as it were, and I would never knock the education system in this country, because we have one of the best in the world, but there needs to be more awareness. That awareness for teachers that are there, that are dealing with those kids on a daily basis. For a lot of them, it isn't there. They're not aware of, what to look out for, what support can be given if they did have a student with a disability, regardless of whether it's visible or not. And that I think will make the biggest difference. Once that awareness is there, then that changes everything, because then as a pupil you feel confident going to speaking to that teacher and actually telling them, I have this problem, I can't do this, or I don't feel like I can do this, and then that starts that conversation off that desperately needs to be started. And as I said, I was very fortunate that I ended up in a school, and I'm very fortunate to my dad who was able to have the funding to be able for me to just finish my final 2 years at a school that could support me. But not everyone has that. Not everyone's in that position.
It sounds wonderful. The school, but for the average person, sending a child, especially if you've got more than one, to a private boarding school is very expensive. One of our friends' daughter goes to a private. She doesn't board, but it's a boarding school, and the fees, when she tells me what the fees are, I'm like, oh my God, you know what I mean? It's horrendous. So hats off for your dad to do that, and any parent that could afford it would do that as well.
And it's a shame that it has to be in that position where it's only the private schools at that time that could support me, that the state schools weren't willing to, but it was not their willingness, it's the sense of they're trapped in a barrier where they're not able to help. You know, once I'm past the age of 18, they couldn't help me anymore. And it was just, it's ridiculous, and it shouldn't be that way. But, you know, that is the way of our system, and hopefully that is something that will be changed sooner rather than later, so that not another generation has to end up in this catch-22 where you've either got to have the money to be able to support yourself through education that way, and parents have to pay for it, or they have nothing.
It's brilliant. Well, I think we've gained a lot of information from you, from both of you, and I really appreciate the time today, and to explain something that I was not aware of, and obviously everybody that's listening. And if I'd please go and check out the website, if you listen to this on the podcast, all the show notes and links to your website and everything. And I'm going to put a link to that school on it as well. And then if anyone wants to check any of those out, if there's anyone that knows anyone that's suffering, please contact them. Create some video content. Tell us where you've been, what you're doing, and I wish you every success in the future. And I know you've got a big project on coming up, because she's in between. She's been swatting as well, so she never stops. So it's been great to meet you today, and thank
you for having us.
Thank you from Mum.
We all need mums, don't we? But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, people, and thanks very much. Cheers. The Duggystone Show. Yeah, big thanks to Alex and her mum for being there. Absolutely lovely people. Really lovely. Please go and check out The Invisible Student, and go and check out, is it Buckford Boarding School? Sounds like a great place to stay, doesn't it? Yeah, so this show goes out on to Duggystone Radio, Duggystone, Duggystone Radio. And obviously you'll probably listen to it either on the station or on the podcast, on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it goes all over the place. Please drop us a line. Why not download our freaking global app so you can listen to the station, and subscribe to this podcast. Also, if you know anyone in need, an invisible student, whether they've got a physical a disability, or I hate the word disability, but you know what I mean. If a physical or non-physical invisible students, I think what they're trying to achieve and trying to do is an absolutely wonderful project, and I think it's great. And I hope you understand a little bit more about the condition. I do now, and now I hear it a lot, I'll know exactly what they mean. And even during the interview, I knew she was in pain, because she kept rubbing her leg and her arm and what have you. And I thought, bless her, she's in a lot of pain, but she had a beautiful smile on her and really good sense of humour. And it just shows you, no matter what life gives you, people, take it, grab it, and make it your own. Until next time, see ya.